My name is Zeinab. I am born in Scotland. I grew up in Germany, studied in England. I now live in Australia. My family is not religious. They were possibly baptized, but they never followed a religion. But I always used to pray myself at home. I had religious classes at school for Christianity, for Protestant and Catholic education classes. So I learned a little bit about Christianity. I learned about Judaism a bit later at uni. I went to synagogue for a while, so I found out a little bit about Judaism. But I realized that both Christianity and Judaism just have something that is not quite right. They're not really perfect. There seemed to be something a little bit odd. I suppose in Christianity, for me, it was the Holy Trinity in particular, which I couldn't understand. The Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. And I have heard that from other Christians, and people are simply told, well, that's what you have to believe. Then in Judaism, my issue was with the Torah scrolls in synagogue. They would keep them behind a curtain and get them out and parade them around as if they were a special object to be idolized. So again, that just didn't sit with me. But it took me a while to actually get to know Islam, because in the West, Islam is not really taught about. So my journey towards Islam was started with online learning. And the online learning actually meant that I had to stop watching TV. So I had time for online learning. And I realized that without the exposure to Western media, my mind started to think in different ways. So I was doing online learning. I was preparing for a possible PhD topic on Palestine and Iran. And I started to become very interested in politics as a result of that. I became very active on social media and on Twitter. And I started to make contact with Muslims, and we were sharing political links, religious links. And so I was starting to learn about Islam without really having chosen to take that path. But then at one point I decided to read the life of Prophet Muhammad, and that sort of did it for me. I realized that whatever the West says about Islam and Prophet Muhammad and his wives is completely wrong. And I just thought that this was the most beautiful example of someone who is looking after women, protecting them, providing for them, and in that way also building a better society. So I suppose my first exposure to Shia Islam, because obviously I'm Shia Muslim, is also due to the fact that all my contacts, my sort of Islamic brothers and sisters, were Shia Muslim, so hailing from Iraq, Iran, the Lebanon. And so a lot of the information I was reading, viewing, videos I was watching were related to Shia Islam. So I think when I read the life of Prophet Muhammad, Shia Islam was already in the back of my mind. And then once I'd read the life of Prophet Muhammad, and also knowing that the Quran actually does say that it follows through the progeny of Prophet Muhammad, I didn't even give Sunni Islam a chance in a sense, because I knew that, you can't actually sort of, it has to go through the imams, basically, through the family. Obviously, I'm aware that Sunni Islam sees that differently, but it's just a natural choice. And so that's more or less how I ended up with Shia Islam. And Shia Islam, to me, is also an Islam that is very political. So for me as a Muslim, I cannot, it's not enough for me to just do my prayers and to fast, go to mosque if there is a mosque to go to, because obviously I live in Perth and there aren't that many around. But it actually means being active, being socially, being politically active, having an opinion, learning more and more each day, because that is also part of Islam. We're supposed to educate ourselves. it's recommended even that we travel. So I've come to Iran. I've come to Iran on a ziyarat visa, which is pilgrimage. But the very first starting point for me to come to Iran was also to come and visit the Massaf Institute, which is where I'm sitting at the moment, because I was very interested in the work they do, so sort of a crossover of religious, political work. So obviously I was very pleased when they suggested I could come and visit the Institute and sit here and do this video and talk about Shia Islam and why I became Muslim. But I think probably for people in the West, it's probably best if I also give a few examples, because this is very theoretical, what my individual learning journey is. And people in the West, and especially women, have this idea that being a Muslim is really bad for a woman. And they look at women with hijab and they think a woman in hijab is oppressed or a woman in chador is oppressed. And I didn't know much about chador until I came to Iran. I know about hijab because I wear hijab in Australia and I get stared at, but that's okay. But now being in Iran, wearing the chador and seeing lots of women wearing chador, I can see, well, obviously some women who are more conservative, maybe a bit older, very religious, who maybe do this thing. They hide themselves a bit more, but that's their personal choice. That is sometimes also a matter of personality. But then a lot of the other women I see wearing chador, they wear them with a lot of confidence. And so I see younger girls, teenage girls wearing chador. They're giggly, they're independent, they're educated, they're powerful. So to me, the hijab and chador is something very special. So obviously I go to some of the mosques here, and when I see the groups of women in their chador, they look very special to me. And then I see the men in their normal trousers or their jeans, and they don't get to wear this, but the women certainly are treasured in a very different way. And for me, coming to Iran, wearing hijab and chador in Iran has also had the consequence that when I go back to Australia, I think I'll wear my hijab with a bit more pride. And I think I'll wear my hijab slightly better, because it's not always easy wearing hijab in the West. And so that's hijab. So hijab is actually very easy. Then the other question people often ask is, well, so what happens when you become Muslim in the West? Is it difficult? And it actually isn't. So adapting to eating different food is very easy. Even in Australia, it's easy to source halal butchers. And I wasn't an alcohol drinker anyway, so it's easy to avoid alcohol. Having said that, I think it's the alcohol issue when you become Muslim, that is where you might have interesting stories regarding how to deal with friends. So I have one particular story that made me think hard about who some of my friends are. And indeed, I've had to drop some of my friends. So I have two other couples, their families, that we would meet up and have meals at each other's houses. So when it was my turn, I said to them, look, is it okay if I just serve non-alcoholic wine, non-alcoholic beer? And I assumed that would be fine, but the women texted me back and said, oh no, the boys, which is the men, they're a bit uncomfortable with that. And I thought, well, that's odd. It's just a couple of hours without alcohol. Surely they can handle that. And then I was thinking, well, if I were vegetarian, then people accept that when you go to a vegetarian friend's house, you won't get served meat. So how is not serving alcohol any different? And then I know another example that relates to that. There was a Muslim family I know went to a street party in another local suburb, and the street party organizers decided to have the whole event alcohol-free, which is quite a big move in Australia because there is quite a strong alcohol culture. So they had served no alcohol, and they also sourced halal meat because of one Muslim family. So I realized that those friends are really not such good friends. So that's to me, that's been one of the main difficulties, realizing who my friends are and who they aren't. But sometimes, in the West, I call my hijab my shield of ignorance, because it keeps away people that I really don't want to bother with, and it brings closer the people who are really worth knowing. So it's actually very beneficial, because I can't stand small talk, and I don't have to small talk, because the people I'd have to, they don't even come and talk to me. So I meet the best people now. I have also had my first Ramadan. That was made easier because I have a good friend in Australia who's from Tehran, so she was able to explain things to me. And some of my Iranian Islamic brothers and sisters online, they were sort of supplying me with prayers and other things to listen to read, to watch. So that was good, and I didn't find fasting difficult. And actually, at the end of Ramadan, there was definitely a sense of loss. Oh, that's it. It did feel very special, even for me as a first-timer. So that's just some of my experiences. There are also some very funny experiences, because obviously, so fasting, food, alcohol, hijab, that's some of the questions that converts get asked. The other obvious one is, well, how do you sort of fit prayer into your daily life? And it's quite okay. You just have to get used to also, depending on your house, that you might have cats and so on wandering across your prayer mat, sitting on your prayer mat when you're trying to pray. So I find it shouldn't crack me up, but sometimes it does crack me up, and then I have to obviously get serious again. But yeah, so prayer is actually quite easy to build into your sort of daily life. I know some people who, depending on their routine, actually take their little prayer mat with them. I'll usually have not the prayer mat, and I always forget the name of the little stone that the Shia Muslims use. I often have that in my bag, because I'm quite happy just to put my head down wherever, as long as I have that. Now, but for people who want to convert, so whether you want to convert or even just learn more about Islam, or Shia Islam, and Shia Muslims like to call it the true Islam, and it is the Islam which encourages people to read widely, to learn, to travel, to engage widely. There are definitely some websites that are really useful. So I was very active on social media, so I found various websites, and then pretty early on, I also came across Masaf, because some of my Iranian friends were obviously knew about Raifi Pur, so they suggested that I watch some Raifi Pur. So that has helped me a lot too in some of my knowledge. So that, again, it's a religious political crossover, which is very good. And then there are big websites such as alislam.org, which have tons of material. So a lot of the main works translated into English on Islam and Shia Islam. So I use that on a daily basis. I've used websites such as siraj.net, and there are other ones on social media. Should I mention more? One of my most formative experiences most recently, because I'm on a ziyarat visa here, which means a pilgrimage visa, has been to, as soon as I got off a 31-hour journey, which indeed did feel like a pilgrimage, because I had suffered by the end of it, so that was good. I went to Mashhad to visit Imam Reza Shrine, and the first impressions were, it's very overpowering, but I kept going back. And I even lost my mobile phone there in the shrine. So I was without communication, but I spent about 8 or 9 hours there in over about 1.5 days, which was pretty good. My first ever prayer in a mosque was at Imam Reza Shrine. So that was very special to me, because I'd always been, or in Perth, there aren't really any proper mosques to go to for Shia Muslims. So that was very useful for me to have that experience. And then when I left, so obviously I was able to have several prayers at Imam Reza Shrine while I was there. And I think it was the last prayer, it was the midday prayer, and then I had to get ready to fly from Mashhad to Isfahan. And that definitely got to me. I was so sad to be leaving. I remember sharing with an Iranian friend that I cried all the way back to the hotel. But as it was daytime, I had my sunnies on, so it was okay. So obviously I'm hoping to go back there very soon. I'd very much like to go to, one of my other dreams is to go to Iraq, to go to Karbala, to be part of Arba'in. And who knows, so inshallah, I never thought I'd be able to come to Iran. Earlier this year, I wouldn't have thought that was possible. I wouldn't have thought it would be possible I'd go to Mashhad. I wouldn't have thought it possible I'd go to Qum. So I will keep praying, and inshallah, Arba'in will come around for me too. So one thing about Shi'ism, people don't really know much about Shi'ism. So when people want to find out about Shi'ism, for example, if they Google Shi'ism, and I wasn't even aware of this because I never had to Google Shi'ism because I had lots of contacts and friends who were Shia Muslims. But if you are unlucky enough to Google Shi'ism, you will find lots of gruesome, violent images of tatbir, which is people self-mutilating themselves. That actually isn't part of Shia Islam. I believe, I've been told that the US, the UK, and Israel is actually propagating this idea that tatbir is part of Shia Islam, obviously to harm Islam and also to harm Shia Islam first, but also to harm Islam full stop. There are some people, as in any group, there are always a couple of people who do something that is a bit out of the ordinary, that we would consider not normal, and that is completely unrepresentative. I think I don't know whether someone told me it's 1 in 10,000 or something like that. People actually do things like that, so that is definitely not part of Shia Islam. To me, Shia Islam is, it is reason, it is logic, it is truth, it is love, it is devotion, it is peace, it is politics. So it encompasses your whole life. It strangely has answers for everything in your life if you bother to go looking for the answers, and you have scholars you can maybe draw on to get some of the more difficult answers. But no, it's nothing to do with that. So that is a political game that's being played to, slander one particular group within Islam that is very peaceful. And with that, I'd actually also say that obviously Shia Islam, the heart of Shia Islam is in Iran. And Iran is one of the few countries that is actually not out there in the world bombing other countries to pieces. So Iran does the very opposite. Iran helps, assists, aids, and tries to sort out the mess that the West is creating. But obviously this is my opinion. I'm sitting in Iran, so I'm very happy to say this. But no, Shia, you definitely need to go and look at other websites. So as I said, start with ourislam.org, look at Massaf Institute, and there's so much information out there. But definitely for example, and there's another website that is part of the Massaf Institute. So there's massaf.ir, which is the Farsi language website, which I'm aware of, but obviously my Farsi is not good enough. But I myself have used their more recently launched English language website called islampfr.com. So on that, you will find information about Shia Islam. You'll find videos by Raifi Poor. You'll find other videos. You find articles on the 12 Imams. I used the articles on the 12 Imams as just a bit of an introduction to the different Imams. But there's everything there also regarding hijab, There's even music, so please have a look at that. That's one of your best starting points if you know nothing or very little about Shia Islam. If you just want to know about Islam, full stop, true Islam, then go there. It's very safe and it's very beautiful.